Harrison Winter watched the child's face like a man following a tense football match. "Go on, kid," he willed the 5-year-old, ignoring the minor glimmer of guilt hovering at the edge of his consciousness as he framed the thought. Scream. Run away. In the garden, separated from Harris by the kitchen window, the little boy's confused and apprehensive expression began to give way to a tentative smile. Harrison sighed, switching his gaze to look over at Tommy, his own 4-year-old, also sitting cross-legged in the garden wearing his little paper party hat. Tommy was beaming jubilantly, practically bouncing up and down with excitement as the hideous creature in brilliant gold and garish red capered around in front of him. A clown. A goddamn honest-to-goodness clown. In his garden. Invited there at his own wife's request to entertain his son and the random collection of similarly aged kids from the preschool. Kids who were now sitting outside, enraptured by the bizarre spectacle of a grown man behaving like an insane, drunken child. It was all Harrison could do to not shudder and look away. Torn as he was between revulsion at the clown and the protective instinct, it arose in him towards the kids. It was a strange, primal hatred that he had for clowns, and not something easily explained. He tried on many occasions to discuss it with Sonia, but she'd almost always given him that, "I'm indulging you now, but storing this up for future reference." Many times Harrison had imagined himself on trial for the accidental murder of a brightly colored lunatic who'd made this mistake of jumping out at him, and seeing Sonia take the stand to repeat all the crazy explanations that he tried to give over the years, he felt strongly that the only people who'd acquit him were similarly clown-hating members of the public, and some research had demonstrated to him that they only made up 4% of the population. Or at least, only 4% admitted it. It even had a name. Coulrophobia. Fear of clowns. To Harrison, it was all simply common sense, or almost all. Any grown man who considered it both a viable and rewarding path through life to dance and caper around children dressed in playful colors and outlandish outfits, conveying expressions they didn't mean and emotions they didn't feel, surely had a screw loose. But that was just a rational analysis. Far more debilitating, far more primal, was the soul-chilling fear he felt at the mere sight of one. It was a fear born of the deepest and most common human instinct, the fear of the unknown, and not the distant unknown, like the fear of death or disease or even terrorism, the fear of an unknown that takes care to hide itself, that purposefully outfits itself in distracting, dizzying colors and hops and twirls towards the beholder, its every effort bent on winning the confidence of those whom it approaches for some dreaded purpose, known only to itself. It was the stuff of nightmares, a being whose intentions are concealed beneath an impenetrable disguise, but which tries its utmost to be appealing, and being given a license to glide through society beneath a mask of congeniality, its true nature shrouded beneath garish costume, free to approach the innocent at will and dazzle them to some unknown end. Harrison took a sip of his tea. It was cold. The liquid had long since stopped steaming, and he had stood watching the clown entertaining his child and those of 7 other trusting sets of parents through the window. He chuckled to himself, shaking his head at his attempt to put a reasoned spin on what was in the end an emotional, baseless dislike. He supposed he didn't really have coulrophobia. He wasn't afraid of them necessarily, he hated them, on a deep, primal level. Seeing one was like a huge spider suddenly landing on his shoulder. Like any right-thinking person, he'd jump and possibly scream. Didn't mean he was afraid of spiders, only that he found their presence spine-tinglingly unpleasant, especially when unexpected. He turned and placed the cup down, thinking idly of Miss Muppet. She of the Courage and Way fame. She probably detested clowns too. Perhaps she was sitting on a tuffet, having left a birthday party like the one outside his window, where no doubt some gibbering fool was pirouetting around dressed in motley or whatever old-timey clowns did. And then, to cap it all, the damn spider ruined her afternoon. Of course, she could have squashed a spider without doing life in prison. Not so much with the clown in the garden. More was the pity. "Hi, honey," Sonia called from within the house, just before the door slammed. He hadn't even heard it open, so lost he had been in his musings. She came bustling into the kitchen from the hall, setting down a heavy-sounding plastic bag and rustling around in it with a sigh. Grateful to have something to look at besides the grotesque clown, Harrison reached for a can of tomatoes. "How's the party?" Sonia asked with a wry smile. And he balanced the can on the 3 others already sitting on the overhead cupboard. "Did we need more tomatoes?" he asked, eyeing the growing stash. She ignored him, handing him a packet of spaghetti. He wedged it between some potatoes. "That's okay," he said in response to her question. "Really hate that clown, though." She gave him a glowing smile and rubbed his back before returning to piling up groceries that didn't need on top of those they already hadn't used. "I think you've done very well," she said, with mock seriousness. Her head inside the lower cabinet, the clang of pans being moved, puncturing her muffled curses as she searched for somewhere to hide the 3 packs of tuna that she'd bought. Harrison turned to glare at the clown. It was now making shapes out of balloons, its bright blue hair flipping in the light breeze. It happened to glance at the house, and Harrison hastily looked away as though the thing could see right into him, with its red-painted eyes. "Considering you're so terrified of them, I'm impressed," Sonia said, finally extracting herself from the cupboard. She gave him a grin, and she started looking up at the freezer. "I'm not terrified of them. I hate them." "You are. You scream when you see them on TV." "That was an insurance advert. It had nothing to do with the clowns. I wasn't expecting it." She giggled to herself, shoving a pack of frozen sausages between 2 big bags of chopped onions. "Frozen onions," Harrison said flatly. "We have knives, you know." "Oh, don't let the clown know that," she said, not glancing up. "I hear they're deadly with a blade." "Shut up," he muttered, looking outside once again. The clown had a bright white face, red smudges around the eyes, and was now smiling a garish, horribly exaggerated blue smile. It looked like a child painting a happy face, come nightmarishly to life. A billowing golden outfit rippled in the breeze as it twisted the balloons, wrapping them around its gloved hands with an unseemingly frenetic jubilance. All around it, the children stared up in wide-eyed hope of receiving a balloon, so innocent, so trusting. The clown glanced up, and Harrison could have sworn it grinned at him. He looked away. "Why do you hate them so much, anyway?" Sonia asked, shaking him from his increasingly creeped-out staring. He looked around. She was sitting by the freezer, having apparently decided that it was jammed too full of the fish fingers that she was holding. Harrison sighed and looked into his teacup at the ice-cold liquid sloshing around inside. I don't know. I remember the first time I saw a clown, though, and I hated it pretty much on sight. I was about 5, 6 maybe. I was in the department store near where we lived, with my mom and her brother. We would have been 2 or 3, I suppose. And I was meant to be watching him for Mom, thinking about it. And this is probably all her fault. He laughed, lost in his memory. Outside, the children laughed. So did the clown. It was a deep, raucous laughter, the sort of laugh you expect from a shaven-headed man in a pub, not a bouncing children's entertainer. Harrison shuddered. Anyway, he wandered off, so I went to find him. I was scared, of course, because I was 6. I saw him on an elevator, which I remember thinking was huge, a massive moving staircase going up into the sky. I was definitely scared of that. I remember looking up, watching him disappear, and then he was gone. "So how come you don't have a fear of escalators, then?" Sonia chuckled. He gasped in mock outrage. "You're making light of my debilitating personal tragedies." No, heaven forbid. "Please do continue." "Right," he said in his best indignant tone. "Well, some lady in a black dress with white spots appeared out of nowhere, picked me up. She carried me up the escalator, and this is why I hate your mother's spotty dress, by the way." "Sure it is." And there he was. The clown? My brother. Watching a clown. How shocking. Oh, it was. She stood up, grabbed the bottle of white wine from the fridge, and making her way over to where he stood. She reached behind him and opened the overhead cupboard. He just managed to avoid being smacked in the back of his head by squirming out of the way. "So this is your traumatic story? You found your brother watching a clown once." She took out 2 glasses and started to pour the wine, glancing out at the clown who was now dancing in a faintly disturbing way, as though his limbs were nerveless appendages flapping around his body. She frowned. "I'll admit they are creepy," she said, taking a sip of wine. "Yeah, thank you." He picked up his own and gulped a large swig, looking pointedly away from the window. It wasn't that he was watching a clown, Harrison added, somewhat defensively. It was that he had wandered away to watch one, up an escalator that even I found scary at the age of 6. He's at 5, whatever. She turned to face him, grinning that gently mocking grin of hers. "So you're saying you're scared of clowns because they make you feel like a scaredy cat big brother frightened of escalators?" "Shut up." "I'm sorry, honey," she said in a syrupy voice, enveloping him in a hug which did not conceal the laughter that she was ineffectively suppressing. "Still," she said, standing back and raising her glass in a short salute, "I'm impressed that you have conquered your fears." "Hardly," he returned, taking another swig of wine and daring a glance out the window. It was strangely silent out there. The clown seemed to be bending low, talking in a whisper perhaps. The kids were leaning forward intently. I just managed to not freak out when he appeared, but I'm not sure that counts as brave. She smiled, looking outside again. The clown was leading the kids in a dance. "Where did you even find him?" she asked. "Is there a check-a-trade for clowns?" He stared at her, feeling the blood drain from his face. Outside, the dancing children had passed beyond the view of the window, following the clown. "What?" he said sharply. She looked at him. "What?" she said back. "Don't joke with me," he said. It's not cool." "Harrison, what?" "You didn't hire him?" No, I thought you did." "Why the hell would I hire a clown?" Sonia was already moving, shouting for Tommy at the top of her lungs. The wine glass smashed to the ground behind her running feet. Outside, the screaming started. Hey there, kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story, and thank you all for listening. Please help support the channel at patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, and make sure to tune in for new horror stories every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night. Many of the horror authors that I've worked with throughout this channel have all come together to work on one big book series, the CreepyPasta Collections Volume 1 and 2. Check them out on Amazon or at any local bookstore near you. Thanks for listening, kids, and sweet dreams.